What's up, everybody? Jason here with Jordan, aka Splash Cousin of Niners Nation, 49ers Gold Mine. We are back from day 3 of camp, my first day, Jordan's second day. So we're going to talk about everything that we saw that happened today. So, we'll give everybody a little bit of chance to come on in, ask questions, and we'll talk about our takeaways. But first of all, Jordan, how are you? What's going on?
I am fantastic. As you saw firsthand, it's a beautiful day in Santa Clara, California today. The 49ers had a great practice all around in my eyes, and it's just, it's good to have football back, man. Keeping it simple. It's just good to be back.
Absolutely, man. Today was fun. It was amazing to be out there. Like you said, a great day, and we have a lot to talk about. So first things first, before we start to get into, the things that everybody really wants to talk about, some little things that really stuck out to me. No Nick Bosa to start today, but as we heard in the press conference today, Kyle Shanahan said that it would be every third day that he would be having off. So 49er fans, don't really stress that too much. It shouldn't be anything too crazy. D Ford was out there with the ones when they first started running a little bit of their drills in the beginning. So that was good. That's a good sign as well. Tavon Wilson was a safety that was actually playing in for Jaquiski Tartt in that spot. And Tim Harris was opposite Jason Verrett, who is stepping in for Mosley. Both of those guys on the COVID list as well, too. Also, Raheem Mostert was out there today with the ones. So I think that lends a little bit more to what Kyle was saying about, he wanted to be light on him for one day. But today it looked like Mostert was taking most of the ones. And Javon Kinlaw and D Ford during 11-on-11s were working off on the side by themselves. So, not that, if you don't see them in practice, it's one thing, but they weren't it didn't seem limited, but they just wanted to keep them on a good, just a good workload and not really overwork them too much. Jordan, did you see anything else that popped out?
No, it seemed to me like, just like you said, it's a precautionary thing. During 11-on-11s, they had, as you mentioned, they had Kinlaw and Ford off to the side, and they looked to be, they weren't in pads, they're in shorts and stuff. You got to keep all your expectations tempered. But D Ford and Kinlaw were moving like guys that didn't seem like they were hampered by an injury that would be something that would concern you in regards to their availability once the season actually begins. I think the 49ers just being really smart and slowly easing these guys back in as these guys get back into football shape and as we head into the full padded practices in the preseason in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and this is a good point, Tony. Thank you for the question. And yes, Marcel Harris in the beginning was working with the linebackers. He was up at the line, almost showing get off as far as the blitz. And it seemed that they were running, and Jordan can attest to this. They were running something where they had two guys on the ball, really, and it looked like both were blitzing, and then one was dropping back and one was heading in. So, you could see that Marcel Harris would be used in that way since he's been a safety and he has a little bit of coverage skills that maybe they show him at the line, drop him back. That was something that I thought was a little bit interesting. Jordan, anything to add there?
Yeah, they had him line up kind of all over. He's been out there consistently the last 2 days. I believe he was there the first day as well. And I think it puts the 49ers in a great spot because they have so much safety depth that while I don't think that Harris is bad by any means, I think there's a lot of players who I would argue are better. And there's just so much depth there, particularly with the addition of a guy like Tony Jefferson. Tavon Wilson has been phenomenal in the 2 days I've been at camp. And we know Jaquiski Tartt is very talented as well when he comes back from the COVID list. He will also be there. So I think what the 49ers did was instead of having to face a decision where they probably would have ended up having to cut Harris just because how stacked that position group was, they found a way to utilize the skill because in my eyes, Harris was always best when he was in the box. He's very good against the run. He's very good tackler. He is a guy that has a little bit of that old school, thumper mentality to him where he's going to lay the wood when he has the chance to on an opposing player. So I think they're going to put him in a spot where his coverage ability won't be as crucial, if that makes sense, and he'll be able to maximize some of his skill sets that he has playing within the box. Maybe not in a traditional will linebacker positional mold, but just kind of like a roving positionless guy that they can kind of move all around the box in what would be as close to a linebacker as compared to any other position.
Yeah, and I agree. And this is kind of ties into this. And thank you for the donation, Gabriella. So any takes on Hufanga? So Hufanga was the first or second, right? Jason Verrett was working out and stretching himself in the end zone, but Hufanga seems to be the first or second guy that's out there on the field. And that's a good sign, but he was working with the twos on the other side, but he was primarily playing that role of, that kind of roaming around single high guy, at least from the little glimpses that I had. when I got to see him. So yeah, I mean, the kid is working, and he seems like he has a great work ethic. And this is the third straight day that he's been the first or second guy in there. The only reason Jason Verrett really beat him out there was Jason Verrett was just stretching in the end zone, and he was the first person that we noticed on the field. But yeah, Hufanga seems to be somebody who wants to work, and he's out there, and he's just with the second team right now. As I said, Tavon Wilson looks like he's filling right now for Tart in that role that opposite Jimmy Ward. So any thoughts there, Jordan?
Yeah, I like that he's showing a clear willingness to want to prove that he's a guy who will be one of the first out, one of the last in. I think that, again, it's a tough proposition because that safety room is so deep, and I think that the DBs as a whole are a lot better than maybe the credit they've received just from some of the stuff I've seen. So I think that Hufanga is a guy that if he can find a way to contribute on special teams, I think he'll make the roster. If they can find a role for him somewhere there, I think he has the speed. He could be a gunner if they could find a way to have him, contributing on kick returns too. That would be huge. I'm just thinking about that actually now that I said that. The Niners have so many good options. They have so many speed guys who could contribute as a gunner. Maybe he wouldn't make it there, but I think he could if he was asked to, and I think he's a guy that would be more than willing to do what it would take to make a team and make a sacrifice by playing a position like that. That may not be as glamorous or desirable as being a safety would be, but I like the attitude, and that's the biggest thing for me is early on, you hear these guys say a lot of things, but when their actions speak louder than words and you're actually the guy coming out first, leaving last, getting in a lot of these, because the practices, everybody knows infamously, they start at 10:17. It's been made very clear. Today it actually started at 10:18. I don't want to call anybody out, but they're a minute late. And you want guys that are going to go out there and do that individual work. And early on, the guys that really stood out to me was Hufanga was one of the guys out early. Shepley was the first tackle that came out. He was the first player on offense who came out. And I think, you said Verrett was the first player overall out there. And the other one was Fred Warner. Fred Warner, real quick, I just wanted to say, he does so many little things that we all know how good he is as a player on the field. Anybody who's watched the guy play, you know how good Fred Warner is. But when you're talking about a leader and a pillar of the franchise, a cornerstone guy, you want a guy who's really a leader. And, one thing that really stood out to me, and it may seem small to some, and maybe this is just my subjective opinion here, but it really stood out to me, was when they were setting up for team drills, individual positional drills where the positional groups break off. They were setting up a drill for the linebackers. And while they have plenty of staff and coaches who are going to set up their cones, their sleds, and all the things that they utilize, Fred Warner went out on his own. No other player in that positional group. They were all busy doing something else. And he was going out there with the staff and basically helping set up. And it's, like I said, it seems like a minor thing, but it's kind of that mentality that even though he's a near $20 million a year man now, he's still one of the guys, and he's still somebody that's going to go out there and have some sort of humility. And to me, it's just, again, it's a small thing, but it really speaks to the leadership and the person that he is. And that to me was very welcoming to see, because it's been made very clear that he is one of the handful of guys that will be cornerstone of that team for the next half decade or so. And again, he was another guy that was out there early, getting a lot of work in individually before the practice officially began. So it's nice to see these guys, even after getting paid, are still buying into the culture and still, showing that leadership and that determination to be better.
Yeah, and that's something that you notice, right? Like he's out there putting out the trash cans for them to start their drills as well, too. Some other little things as well. Mike McGlinchey is massive, man. I like, he just looks huge now. And even though he wasn't nearly as close to us on the field because he was mainly on the side field, he looks huge. And that's a great sign. Other things that kind of stood out, Mosa Nu is fine. And he actually, we'll get into that when we start to talk about, the 11 on 11s and everything as well, too. We got a donation from Tony. Tony, how did Kinlaw's knee look? He looked fine. I mean, it's clear that the 49ers are trying to just take it slow with him and not put him in any position to, put extra stress on that knee or anything like that. But he looked fine. Like when he was running, him and D Ford were jogging back and forth, and they were on the sled, and they were, they look fine. I didn't really see anything that looked bad. I mean, he went on Instagram yesterday and made sure that everybody knew that there was no injury, but he looked fine. I didn't really see anything that was of any concern as far as that. This is a third straight day, and knock on wood, nothing really to report when it comes to anybody getting banged up or anything like that. So, today was a short practice, a very short practice, actually. Like I would have thought that they would have went 2 hours, but seemed like they cut the 11 on 11s a little bit short, especially after, that one rep that Jordan could attest to, where the ball was thrown to Sanu, and Jimmy Ward made a great play, but they kind of collided, and I think that kind of pushed everybody back and said, hey, let's slow down a little. Look, guys are moving around, they're flying around, things like that are going to happen, but I think that the idea of not overworking these guys and not putting anybody in a position to be injured was something that's definitely on the mind of this staff. If Jordan agrees.
Yeah, and the whole thing with Kinlaw. So Kinlaw was out there. Ford was as well. When they're doing the individual workouts before the 11-on-11s, and for anyone who doesn't know, the 11-on-11s is basically it's going to be generally your first team offense versus your first team defense, and the second team come in. Sometimes you'll kind of pepper guys in and out, but for the most part, it's going to be as close as you're going to get to at this stage of camp. It's going to be the closest you're going to get to actual game action, where it is going to be a little bit heated in terms of competition. It is more tailored to breed competition rather than just hammering routes down or getting coverage down. So Kinlaw and Ford have been held out of that because, just like Jason mentioned, I don't think it was on purpose. I think this is what happens when you get out there. Your instincts kick in. It's a football play. Jimmy Ward lit Sanu up. Sanu caught a ball. I forget if it was from Trey or Jimmy. I think it was Jimmy, if I remember correctly. I'd have to check my notes. But he caught a ball from Jimmy, and he held on. I'll give him credit. He held on. But Jimmy Ward lit him up pretty good. And I think the 49ers are just in a position where they don't want to risk getting a guy like Kinlaw or Ford or Bosa or these guys.
It was a Jimmy throw. It was a Jimmy throw.
Yeah. So they don't want to risk getting them hurt. But they did participate when they had the first team defense out there doing their own individual workouts as a defense. Kinlaw was out there, and Bosa, I was there yesterday when Bosa was actually participating in practice, he was out there for the individual stuff with the defensive linemen and with the defense. They're just holding them out of 11-on-11, sorry. And I think that's just a precautionary thing at this point. I don't think it's anything that any fan needs to be worried about at this juncture.
Yeah, and before we get into what everybody else is asking about, I think it was Kali. Kali, what's up, man? Thank you for tuning in. He asked on Twitter how Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon look. I think the defense actually really did well today in terms of the run game. Elijah Mitchell has a lot of burst. Wayne Gallman actually had a really, really nice run too. Like, nobody's going to talk about that. But for the most part, there were some plays where, the handoffs we didn't really chart because those aren't passes for the quarterbacks. But a handoff to Sermon it looked like it would have been a loss. But, obviously nobody's going to tackle, and they just let Sermon run. So the defense was doing a good job of getting in there. And the question right here in front of us, Jesse Rodriguez asked, did you guys get a look at Banks? Banks wasn't running with the ones. So it was Brunskill who was there at right guard. And Jordan and I were talking during the practice. It seems like Banks is a little bit slimmed up. Jordan, do you want to elaborate on a little bit?
Yeah, so Banks came in out of the draft out of Notre Dame at 330. There's no way he's 330 now. If I had to guess, he's lost at least 15 pounds. I'd say he's probably around 315, maybe a little bit bigger than that, between 315 and 320, but there's definitely a noticeable weight difference. He looks like he's moving a little bit better. But as Jason alluded to, Daniel Brunskill is getting the reps with the ones. And again, at this point in camp, it's still early. Your incumbent starters you're going to give the veterans an opportunity. It's their job to lose at this point, and I'm not surprised at all by that. I don't think it's an indictment on Banks at all. We have a long way to go, but he looks like a guy who's moving well. And again, the biggest thing for me is I think he'll look a lot bigger too once they're in pads. When he was at Notre Dame, the biggest thing that stood out to me was this guy looked like he was so hard to move, and he rarely got beat, and his technique has a lot to do with it. But just that sheer size alone, I think, is ultimately what's going to land him that starting right guard spot. But there is a matter of understanding the scheme and picking up the playbook, huddle cadence, and all the little things that go into being a successful unit that's in rhythm on offense. But, I think that I don't want to, speculate that they said, hey, we need you to slim down a little bit. But I definitely don't think it hurt. And just like Jason alluded to before, McGlinchey beefed up a little bit. These guys' weights will fluctuate year to year, but they know ultimately what's going to be best for them and is going to put them in the best position to succeed. So I think that Banks probably felt and this is just based off the tape that I watched, while he was very agile and capable of getting to some of those spots you're going to need for that outside zone running scheme, losing that 10 pounds will make a huge difference. Just like I think McGlinchey tacking on some pounds will end up making a huge difference for him as well. So the offensive line as a whole, real quick, I wanted to add, looks phenomenal. They look like a unit of guys that is ready to maul opposing defenses. There's a lot of skill on there, and it's a group that I think people should be very excited about, particularly Jimmy, Trey, whoever ends up starting at quarterback, should be very happy about the line that's been assembled in front of them.
And a little bit of context to that too. Ford's not out there, Bosa's not out there when they were taking those reps as well too. Ebukam talked about in the press conference how hard it is to go up against Trent Williams, and we kind of saw him when they had him in there because he was with the ones. But it's obvious that they're going to use him in certain packages. You guys know the Alpha Bravo, those turbo packages. But he was doing a lot of showing at the line and then dipping back, and they worked on that for a little bit in the drills in the beginning. So burning question, how is Pepper, the long snapper, looking? He looks phenomenal, man. The guy has an amazing ponytail. He's hiking the ball to Mitch. It was looking really good. Some people who had a rough day today, Richie James had a rough day today. He had 2 drops, one from Jimmy, one from Trey. And the one from Trey was particularly troubling because it was a throw that, okay, might be classified as high, but as an NFL wide receiver, you got to bring in. And if it is brought in space, Richie James is able to take that for another 35, 40 yards. It was right in the right window. It just was a little bit high, but Richie James has to bring that in. Kind of hurts his chances, especially now that we're talking about, Sanu had some catches. We talked about Sanu catching the ball with Jeremy Ward bearing down on him. He had some catches with Trey and Jimmy. And, it seems like as of right now, especially considering everything with Jawan Jennings being on COVID, that Sanu has a leg up on this wide receiver 3 position. You hear guys talking about, how he looks, but today he looked great. He looked great as far as catching the ball in space and running the right routes. Jordan, did you see anything from Sanu?
Yeah, I just think that Sanu looked more comfortable going over the middle than any of the other wide receivers. And that's ultimately what they're going to probably be asked to do. Whoever wins that wide receiver 3 spot is probably going to be asked to operate out of the slot quite a bit, even though Debo and Ayuk are more than capable of doing it. So to me, that's the biggest thing. He showed a good amount of burst after the catch, which makes me believe that his ankle is healed up a bit. I tried to tell anybody who would listen that, while it was a bummer, and I understand Niners fans are going to base most of their opinion off what they saw when he was in a Niners uniform or maybe what they caught of him in a Patriots uniform before. As the season went on after the Niners cut him last year and he was in Detroit, he got better each week. And ultimately, as the ankle healed, surprise, surprise, he ended up playing a lot better. So I think he is at a point now where I don't think that ankle is really like a bother or really anything that would lead you to any kind of concern. I don't want to speak for him, but to me, he looked like a guy who wasn't hindered at all. And again, he's a veteran guy. He has experience in Shanahan's system, and he had confidence going over the middle repeatedly. And that was the biggest thing to me. The Richie James ball, I'm torn because I'm with you. I think he definitely could have caught the ball, but I also do think Lance threw it a little bit high, and we can talk about that later. Lance has been leaving a lot of balls high in the last couple of days, but I don't see anybody else who's going to really seize that wide receiver 3 spot. To me, it's Sanu's job to lose at this point, and he's unquestionably the front runner to me at this point.
Yeah, we all know that Kyle loves the idea of a big slot. We didn't see Jalen Hurts today because of a maintenance day, and that's fine, right? When people are asking, hey, where is he? It's fine. As long as there's no sort of a report that anything has happened or any setback, I'm fine with it. But it would be nice to see him out there. Hey, whatever. Take your time. Just make sure that the kid is right. But Kyle definitely wants his big slot, and it seems like he's got it with Sanu right now because whatever he's done in the offseason, he's done enough to slim up and be fast and be able to get himself open in those spaces that need to be. So I guess everybody is here for what happened today with the quarterback. So let's just get into it. Unfortunately, Sudfeld was 0 for 3 today. Sorry, guys. I know that that's what you guys came here to take a look at. But no. And, Josh Rosen, actually, it's funny. Yesterday, Jordan talked about it. Josh Rosen had the most impressive throw out of everybody, and he had one of the more impressive throws today also. So there was a defender bearing down on him, and he kind of sidearmed it. It looked really nice, and it got out for a completion. But 2 for 4 for Rosen, 0 for 3 for Sudfeld. But all right, let's talk about Jimmy and Trey because that's really what everybody's here for. So context. This is what I'm talking about, right? When I tweeted out, context is the word of the day, okay? So if I tell you that somebody was 7 of 11, right? That sounds amazing, right? 7 completions out of 11. That sounds good. And if I tell you that someone was 5 out of 10, okay, 50% isn't really, that's not a completion percentage that you're looking for. But everything needs its context. So when we're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, his first 4, he started 6 for 6 straight completions of when he was given reps, everything, okay? First one was a dump off to Sermon on the left. The second was a slant to Sanu. The third was a short pass to Mostert. The fourth was Sermon over the middle. And then the fifth was that Sanu throw, which was probably the toughest throw that Jimmy made today. It was a throw from the left side. Sanu's coming over the middle, and Jimmy put it out there. He kind of banged into Ward. But I think what's important is, yes, they're completions, but he's still living in that intermediate short range, and he's not really looking to take any shots. Jordan, anything to add, at least on the first 6 throws that we saw from Jimmy Garoppolo before he moved into the other one?
No, just that's Jimmy Garoppolo. It was nothing jumped out at me. I thought he looked a lot better, even in the short throws that he was throwing, the swing routes out of the backfield, stuff within 5-6 yards of the line of scrimmage. He looked a lot better today than he did yesterday. So that's an improvement and something to definitely be optimistic about. But again, his issue has never been, he's always been a guy who's been pretty good at throwing in the short to intermediate area, and that's never really been a concern to me. It's when the ball has to go outside the numbers, down the field, pushing the ball a little bit further. That's where the issues really started to rise. I don't want, whenever you want to segue into that, that's on you. But yeah, nothing surprised me with that. That's just basically the Jimmy we've seen for the last 3.5 years or so.
So those are the first 6 throws, right? And then the 7th throw, that was probably an interception. I mean, he threw it over the middle to Kittle, and the safety jumped it, and unfortunately, he didn't come down with it. He jumped right in front of Kittle and almost had it. Another one to the flat on the next throw, so that's 6 of 8, and then 6 of 9. The 9th throw was a little bit troubling because it was an outside throw to Deebo Samuel, but it was at his feet. Like, he kind of skipped it in there. And then 7 of 10. The 10th throw was actually really nice. It was a deep out to Kittle. That was actually really nice outside the numbers towards the sideline. Really nice throw. And then again over the middle on the 11th throw, which was behind. So it was behind, and it ended up being broken up. So that's the point, right? So 7 of 11 sounds like whatever it is, but when I was taking notes, and this is literally what I'm reading my notes. It's all about where the ball was going. What was the context of it? And that's the point, right? It's very, I guess it's misleading to say 7 of 11. Oh, he's sharp. Well, yeah, he's sharp in the areas that he's always been sharp in, and there's still those throws that are concerning. But the interception that should have really happened, on the 7th pass, that one was a little bit concerning because that's over the middle, and the safety was still able to jump that and get in front of it. Any thoughts on those other throws, Jordan?
Yeah, so what Jason and I pretty much were taking almost the same notes, just keeping track of everything. In my notes, I had after the 6th pass, which was a swing pass in the flat. Again, he was executing fine. He had a throw behind Kittle. I don't want to be wrong here, so I'm not 100% certain, but it looked like the play was broken up by Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who I am a huge fan of, and I believe has not only a strong shot to make the roster, but a strong shot to be a high-impact player for this team this season. Big fan of DFF. And the next 3 throws that Jimmy made were either behind, underthrown, or wide. He went through a stretch there where it did not look very good. But in his defense and to his credit, after those 3, he had a throw on about a 15-yard out route to the far hash on the right side, outside the numbers, to George Kittle. That was on a dime, on a rope, a very good throw. So again, while we will be here to point out the stuff that was not so good, I do think credit is due when he does well, and he did make a nice throw there to Kittle. And then he followed that up with a pass to Deebo that was low and behind him over the middle. So that's kind of the biggest thing. And again, it's kind of the theme we've seen with him when he's in game situations as well. We know the talent's there. We know he is capable of making those throws. It's just a matter of consistently stringing them together. So ultimately, if I had to summarize what I saw from Jimmy Garoppolo today, it was that when he was throwing short within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, checking out of the backfield, he looked really good. And then he also had that one good throw. I will say, that deep out down the field, he did have a good throw there. He does deserve that credit. But immediately when he was asked, when it became clear that the pattern was switching to them asking him to take a couple shots downfield, and they were aiming, the objective was more to throw outside the numbers down the field a little bit, he did start to struggle there. And I just don't think that it's not something where it's like, oh, it's just one day of practice, it'll go away. It's been an issue for years. And I think ultimately that's just kind of a great example of why they started to seek other answers at that quarterback position. And again, I think that Jimmy hasn't performed in a way that makes me want to cut him or trade him or ship him out of town now. But I do think that the same issues that we have seen for a couple of years now are still there. It's just a matter of, can they string together enough offense operating in that short to intermediate over the middle? Because Jimmy's a guy that can still do, for the most part, he did have a couple throws behind when he was throwing over the middle. When he's throwing between the hashes, he still does have a good amount of talent, hitting his reads there, seeing the field pretty well. So It's just a matter of how much can they really squeeze out of that before defenses are really taking that away and daring him to go outside and deep. And I think that's the biggest question going into the season if he is ultimately the starter, which as of now, he's taking the first team reps. It's his job to lose ultimately.
Yeah, and when you look at how the reps were distributed, right? 11 passes, but that doesn't mean that's all of the reps, right? I didn't chart any of the handoffs, and they had a few, about 3 or 4 with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then, you get to Trey, and there's 10. So it's close. It's very close, but it's clear that Jimmy's running with the one. So everybody's asking about Trey. Honest opinion, Trey had an off day today. Throws were high, and he'll tell you that. And when you notice it, even when he was working off on the side, he would, throw a pass that was a little bit high for, somebody in a drill, not even on 11 on 11. And he would go back and he's like working on the whole mechanics and everything. So, today was a little bit of a struggle, but I will say this, in the contrast of me talking about Jimmy Garoppolo being line of scrimmage, the intermediate, it's the exact polar opposite with Trey Lance. The polar opposite. Everything is 10, 15, 20 yards down the field. He's pushing the ball down the field. The ball pops in a different way. And I know that you hear this, and what does that mean? Well, what it means is when Jimmy Garoppolo throws it, it's a nice ball. It comes out nice and it spirals. But when Trey Lance throws it, it's like it's shot out of a bazooka, right? It just has a little bit more zip on it. So we'll go real quick through his numbers. The first throw was an underthrow to Kittle over the middle, unfortunately. Kind of just skipped in there as well, too. The second throw was a dart to Benny Fowler over the middle. It was almost it felt more like a drift route, Jordan. It was more of a drift route than it was a straight slant.
The one to Devo?
No, the one to Benny Fowler, the second throw.
Oh yeah, it looked kind of like it. I can't say for sure if it was drift or not, just from the angle we were sitting at. And they were off on the far field today, so it was a little bit more difficult to chart the individual routes they were running. But it was something similar, yeah. And that's the thing, is that he's looked great. That hasn't been the problem for them. I think fine-tuning things on the outside is really going to be where the challenge comes.
Right. So he was just a little bit off on certain throws. And you could see, like I said, he keeps going back and he keeps working on it. It's fine, guys. It's only day 3 of camp, right? There's no reason to freak out. So the third pass was high and tipped. It was intended for River Craycraft. Again, he threw it up high, but it was still tipped by a defender. And you could see him kind of come back and want to do that. The next one was a rollout, which ended up being a pass breakup. It was a nice play by the defender. I can't remember. Do you have the note on the fourth throw who it was that actually broke up that pass, Jordan?
I don't believe it. Let me double check real quick. 1 second. It was hard to keep track of both.
It wasn't Maiden, because Maiden's 7. That's the thing. It's kind of hard because they were on the other side of the field. Like for whatever reason, they were just far off. So it was hard to tell, but it was a nice play. I mean, if Jordan could pick it up, then that's fine. But it was a pass breakup, right? Like the throw came and it was just a little bit behind, but the defender got in there and they got in there. Sanu was the next one on the 15 yards. And that feels more like a drift route than it does a slant. It was a 15-yarder to Sanu, who again got himself open out of the slot, and Trey put it right on him. It was a really nice throw. So it's crazy, right? He's 2 of 5 right now, and a kid could put his head in the in the ground and start to go through the motions, but I feel like he picked it up after that. And I don't know if Jordan feels the same way. Like right after that throw, I feel like Trey started to pick it up and he started to gain a little.
So in my notes, I just saw it. I had it just as broken up deep down the left hash. I didn't have the defender. My apologies for that. I think the biggest thing with Trey that stood out, and especially when you compare him not just to Jimmy, but to all the other quarterbacks, was the level of difficulty that he had on all of his throws was clearly more difficult than anybody else. And I don't think that was by accident. They were clearly dialing up deeper shots outside the numbers. And he was taking a little bit more, like it seemed like he was more willing to force the ball downfield. Whereas again, a lot of the reps you saw with Jimmy, they were completions, but he was checking down to guys out of the backfield, guys in the flat, stuff that were, pretty routine completions. Whereas Lance, a lot of the stuff he was missing was deep. But I will say this, I tweeted out a little bit ago as well. He has a propensity to miss high. And that's something that I noticed on his college tape too. He has a great arm, and sometimes there's too much arm there. And he leads guys too far out in the open, and he throws balls a little bit too high. And I noticed a couple throws today. He did that as well. He did that yesterday when I was there as well. So while I think that there's a balance of, understanding that some of his completion rate is going to be a little bit off just because he is taking more chances and having more difficult throws, tighter windows to throw into farther downfield. He also doesn't just get a pass because of that. If we're making this comparison, there were some throws that I'm sure he wished he could have back. The biggest thing for me that I'm liking seeing from Trey Lance is when he misses those throws, he is not pouting about it, but he's also not brushing it off like it's nothing. He very clearly, his body language is very good. And he, just like Jason said, he comes back the next rep and that throw after. You can tell that he's tweaking his mechanics a little bit. He's thinking about it. He's cognizant of the things he needs to work on. And ultimately, as much as I'm going to be objective and I'm just going to report what I see and let you know what my thoughts are, I will also add that we should understand that this guy's a 21-year-old rookie. And the fact that they had, they had a week or so in June to do OTAs together and whatever workouts they've done off facility in the off season together. It's going to take time to build some rapport, because the only other thing I'd add is that he has been late on a couple throws today and yesterday as well. But his arm is so good that even though he misses that initial window, he's still making up for it and giving his guys a chance to get it. Like yesterday, he had a throw to Debo that he was probably a half second, maybe a full second late on. But Debo was able to come back on his back shoulder to catch it, because Lance has such natural arm talent that it will allow him to kind of have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of timing. But that timing is also something that you ultimately build through these training camp reps. So if we still see that issue where he's missing reads and he's late and he's missing guys high late in the preseason, as we get in towards the regular season or maybe even in the regular season, then yeah, I think it would be something to be a little concerned about. But again, this is what training camp is for, is you work out these things, you get that timing together, you build that camaraderie, and you really start to build a rhythm within that offense. And just real quick, I'd add, I'm not trying to sway anybody one way or the other. This is just my unbiased opinion. The ball jumps out of Trey Lance's hands better than any of the three other quarterbacks. And it's just a way – I've said it a bunch. He's a natural thrower of the football, and it's just clear as day. If you're just using the eye test and putting everything else aside, the ball comes off his hand differently, and it allows them to be a little bit more explosive in that passing game, take shots downfield. He had a really nice throw. Jason, I'm sure, remembers – where he evaded the rush, rolled out to his right, on the run through while he was running to his right, hit Kittle in stride off to the right side about 15 yards, 17 yards downfield. So the guy just has a lot of talent. It's just a matter of can he work on these small things, and what kind of chemistry and camaraderie is he going to build with that offense to start building some sort of rhythm with his receiving targets.
See, and to answer this, Manny, thank you for tuning in. The problem is that he was missing high when they were running drills of they're just having a guy stand on the hash, and he's not a receiver, right? So he's not giving his receiver a chance. He's throwing the ball high, and he came right back, and so yes, I understand the whole give a receiver a chance, but that's not what was happening in the drills. He was just missing high. So after that, though, here's really what I was impressed with, right? Like you said, could have hung his head, right? But I feel like he turned it on after that. So on the 6th attempt, Debo runs a beautiful comeback route. And by the time he's out of his break, he turns around. That ball's in his chest, and Debo brings it in. It was a nice 15-yarder, 20-yarder throw. It was a really nice throw. So he comes right back after that. The next one was the one that Jordan's talking about, is the on the run. He evades the rush. The rush got there, and he evades the rush and gets out. And you see him off of a foot make a throw towards the sideline. Ross Dwelly brought it in. It was a beautiful throw. The crowd applauded. It was really what you want to see. Then the next one is the one that's a little bit, debated. So it was a play action. It was a deep shot to the left side with Debo Samuel with, I forget which safety it is. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I couldn't write it all down while it was all happening. But the ball was up. It was a little bit late, right? It was. And maybe the safety shouldn't have, or should have knocked it down or something like that. But Debo went up and caught it. And those are the sort of throws that aren't happening with Jimmy Garoppolo. Trey Lance is taking these shots. And as you can see, it was night and day. Jimmy Garoppolo was literally completing passes in the same areas that he usually does. But you can see the difference. Like Jordan said, they're dialing it up. Trey's actually throwing the ball down the field, like 15 yards outside the numbers, 15 yards, 20 yards outside the numbers. Even that throw is something that we haven't seen. And Debo brought it down. Look, do you want him throwing 50-50 balls? I wouldn't even necessarily call it that. The throw was a little bit late, but the arm talent was enough where the safety reached up. It was over his hand, and Debo Samuel jumped up and grabbed it. That was an amazing catch. He followed that one up, the next throw, with Richie James running a slant over the middle. It was a dart. It was right where, like, it may be a little bit high, but if Richie James wants to win this job, he's got to bring those in. And I'm sure that Richie James would have told you that he should have caught that. So I was really impressed with the way he bounced back. Again, rookie, we need to temper expectations and make sure that we're evaluating this the right way. But the kid bounced right back, and he still was going at it. And you heard Kyle Shanahan in the press conference say, I like it. I like that he keeps firing. You can tell the difference in between the two, because it's night and day with the average depth of target, most likely for all the Jimmy Garoppolo passes, couldn't be no more than maybe 4 to 5 yards, no more. The average depth of target on Trey Lance's throws are 15 and up easily on the 10. Jordan, anything to add there?
No, not really. I just think that I guess we're still talking quarterbacks. I would just add real quick. It's not as glamorous as the Jimmy Lance stuff, but I think that there is a battle for that third QB spot, and it's really interesting because Sudfeld looks great when they're off doing individual stuff. The ball looks good coming off his hands, very smooth. Threw a couple darts when he was throwing deep balls down the far hash, but the last couple days in 11-on-11s, he's just looked not great, and there's no other way I could put it. I don't mean that with any disrespect. It's just he hasn't looked great. Rosen has arm talent, and there's zero denying that Rosen has arm talent. He has had, for sure, yesterday, he had the best throw of the day. If I had to give a vote for best throw of the day, I would probably give it to him today for that sidearm throw Jason mentioned too. So it's kind of frustrating because you know that the arm talent is there. It's just the reps in between each one of those good throws are very frustrating and difficult to watch. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, because Sudfeld strikes me as a guy who is somebody that Kyle might like because he's been rumored to be very cerebral. He understands the playbook and stuff very well. He looks very good. You know what it honestly reminds me of? It reminds me a lot of Nick Mullins with a better arm when I watch him. And we all know Mullins was Kyle's guy, regardless of how fans feel about him. He was definitely a guy they liked in that building. Scangarello obviously really liked him. So I'm wondering if maybe Sudfeld somehow sneaks his way into that third QB spot. Because if we're talking pure arm talent, I think Rosen is clearly the guy up there. But it's going to be fun to watch. And I think anybody who's sick of hearing about the Lance Garoppolo debate, if you still want to talk quarterbacks, tune in. We'll have the third QB battle live for you, because it's something too that it will ultimately be very important, because as we know right now, there's so much unpredictability with the COVID list and the vaccinations and all these things, that the Niners will probably roster a third quarterback, and you don't want to get to a spot where you're in an emergency and you have to start one of those guys, or you're on your second quarterback and they go down. You want to make sure that position is solidified. So I know it may not be as appealing, or might not be the sexy thing to talk about, but that third QB battle is something that I'll be watching very closely as camp begins to unfold.
Yeah, Jordan's got a good point, but thank you, Barry, for the donation. He says Trey answered a question yesterday. If he just, they asked him, are you just throwing the ball out there to see what happens? He answered that he doesn't do that. Shows a very deliberate mindset of trying to improve, for sure. And again, that's why it gets a little confusing when people say jump ball. Like, he didn't throw a jump ball. That's not. There's a difference between that. Literally, a jump ball. What that means to me is two guys standing in the same spot. You just throw it up and hope your guy gets it. No, Debo was running a route on that throw, and if it was late, that's fine. Even if the safety should have made a play, but it's not a jump ball. That's a different thing. I feel like that's something that's a misconception amongst what's being reported. I didn't see a jump ball. I saw a guy give his receiver a chance, but I'm not talking about a jump ball. Like, he knew exactly where he wanted to go with the ball, and whether it was late or not is something completely different. But a jump ball to me implies that there are two guys in the same spot and you're just tossing it up, hoping that he comes down with it. Didn't seem like that, honestly. Trey worked the play action, came down, looked, and he got it out there when he got it out there. So he sees it and he rips it. That'll come with time about seeing it and throwing it at the right time. But Debo made a great play too. Like, I look, you want to say what you want about the safety. Debo went up and got it, and I got to give him credit. That was probably the highlight of the day. It was really a beautiful catch by Debo Samuel. All right, and then on the last throw for Trey, it was a dropped interception on a similar thing that happened with Jimmy, where he kind of broke in and undercut a route. So look, 5 of 10. That doesn't sound glamorous, right? But that's why I posted the numbers on Twitter on purpose to say that I would elaborate on here, because I feel like those numbers are misleading when it comes to that. 7 of 11 and 5 of 10 are not equal. Jordan alluded to it and talked about it. The degree of difficulty on these throws that Trey Lance is throwing, it's completely different. It's easy to go 7 of 11 when you're looking down to, right here, right there. One of the throws that Jimmy had was a completion, but it probably would have been a loss if there were pads on. It would have been a loss of yards. So completions aren't necessarily everything. What do you want to see? You want to see a guy who can make throws that haven't been seen here in a long time in this building, and you want to see him progress when things go down or they're not going your way. You want to see him bounce back, and that's what I liked about Trey. Like, he didn't put his head down after he was high on those drills or anything like that. He came right back, started working back on his arm, and then the next throw, he's right back in there. So that's kind of what Kyle was talking about in the press conference as well. Something that I walked away impressed with as well too. So for it's just one day. no reason to overreact one way or the other. But you can tell the difference in the quarterbacks and the styles and the way that they're throwing the ball, because Trey was just, everything was down the field. Like I said, average depth of target is night and day between the two. Is Jimmy Garoppolo playing it safe? Maybe, but that's sort of been his game. In the middle of the field, getting it down to the guys that are open quickly so they can get the ball, run after catch. And that's a lot of what Kyle's offense is. But Trey is unlocking a little bit more, and that'll come with time. It's hard to watch him and not be excited because, as Jordan said, man, that ball just jumps out of his hands. Jordan, anything else about Trey Lance that you wanted to point out? Because I feel like, here's a good question. Here we go. Jesse asked, who is returning punts so far in camp? In the beginning, they had Sherfield out there for a little while. They had Richie James off on the side. So it seems like they're taking a committee approach, and they're allowing everybody else to get a shot. So we'll see. I think it's going to be really interesting next week when pads come on. I think we'll learn a lot more about things because there'll be some hitting, and you'll start to find out what the results of these plays are, right? So like on the far field, and this is what I mean by this, on the far field, you see Trey Sermon taking a run to the left, and then he starts running down the field. Well, they're not hitting him. So like, would he be able to make that run if there was hits and things like that? So I think it's a little bit harder to judge the running backs and certain defensive players when there's no pads on, because they can't really do what they want to do, and they're not going to hurt one of their players. So I think that's a committee approach right there with the punts. You heard Ayuk in the press conference talk about that he would like to take some of these punts. So we'll see how that shakes out a little bit more. But Jordan, anything else that stuck out to you? Anything else that you want to touch on? Because I think we kind of touched on everything. 40 minutes is good, unless you guys have other specific questions. Here's one. Here, I'll throw it to you. Thoughts on Wentz going down in a possible Jimmy trade to Indianapolis? I'll let you start.
So the fit, first of all, would be good. Frank Reich has a lot of RPO built into his offense. Jimmy is very comfortable. RPO is run pass option. The 49ers on their way to the Super Bowl in 2019 were a very RPO-heavy offense, and that was a key part of what made that team so good. So I don't think there would be a really much of a struggle fit-wise having Jimmy seamlessly come in and run that offense. The question becomes, what's the compensation going to be? Because if Wentz misses enough time to the point where they're trading and they're giving up capital for another quarterback to come in and start, that conditional pick that they sent to Philadelphia that would have been a 1 had he played, I think it was 75% of the snaps this year, would end up being a second-round pick. So they're giving up that second-round pick for Wentz. How comfortable would they be parting with a 3 to get Jimmy? I don't know. And are the 49ers going to move him for a 4th-round pick? Again, these are questions that we really don't have the answers to, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. But the fit is definitely there from a schematic standpoint, and I definitely could see there being a mutual interest should Trey Lance reach a point where it's very evident that he is the guy they're going to roll out week 1. It would give Jimmy an opportunity to continue to start, rebuild up some of his value in an offense that's conducive to his strengths and that he could produce in. And it would also give the Colts clearly a better option than what I believe Jacob Eason would give them currently right now, who I believe he is the backup behind Wentz in Indy there.
Yes, it is Jacob Eason. And it also begs the question, and I see someone in the comments saying it's just there's a lot of money for Wentz. It's a lot of money for Jimmy. So any sort of deal that would have to happen, it would have to require Jimmy Garoppolo either voiding the rest of his contract or taking some sort of pay cut. I just don't see it happening at this point. But the thing is, as much as I don't see it happening, the Colts are a win-now team. They're not here to rebuild or anything like that. That's why they went and got Carson Wentz. They have a lot of guys that they feel like they can compete with. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. I would imagine they make a call, but I don't know how this works, especially when it comes to the camp. So, I mean, the cap, numbers can be reworked, and that's true. And he does work well with Frank Reich. That would be, and that was something that before Carson Wentz was an idea. Hey, send him to Indianapolis. But I don't know if that's going to happen. It's going to be tough to see, but it is kind of interesting to hear all this news about what happened with Wentz now. And I don't know if this organization wants to waste that win now team. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out. Let me see. There was another question in here that I wanted to answer. Big Golden Nuggets, thank you, bro, for tuning in. Does hitting benefit the offense or defense? I'm not certain. And that's a really good question. I think that it will show me more about the running game than anything. And I think a little bit about, obviously, you can't hit quarterbacks or anything like that because the pass rush was there. Like, you could see it. There was times where the pass rush was coming. Jimmy had to step up. Trey had to evade the pass rush and get out for certain throws. So I think that what I'm interested to see when the pads go on is how many of these runs with Sermon and Gallman? Gallman's run, no one was close to him. That was that, and that wasn't just out of sheer speed. They just outflanked them to the outside, and Gallman hit the hole, and he was gone. But I'm interested to see how many of these runs either get stopped dead in their tracks or are 2 or 3 yard gains, because they just let guys run up the field. So it's a little bit harder to judge the defense when the pads aren't on. Jordan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that without pads, the offense is going to have an advantage in almost any situation when you're in practice like that. Just because, just in general in the sport, defense is reactionary, offense is generally dictating the terms, and the defense is reacting to what they're doing. And guys are going to ultimately be faster when they know that there's nothing prohibiting them from being hit, or there's something prohibiting them from being hit. So there's nothing really to worry when you go over the middle. You don't have pads, you don't have anything slowing you down like that. So I would say hitting definitely benefits the defense more, and that's why you see a lot of these times in practice. And because they're willing to take chances, like I'm sure everyone remembers in 2019, that day when it was a huge deal was made out of all the picks Jimmy threw in practice one day. And we saw clearly how good that defensive line was. And these guys are going full steam and they're allowed to hit. That defensive line was terrorizing quarterbacks all over the league. So the defense will always have the advantage if hitting is allowed. But it does also lend some positives to an offense as well. You got to get these guys back into football shape. And especially not saying that last season was an odd year. It's been a weird year for everybody the last 18 months or so. So getting these guys back into football shape where they're regularly facing contact and getting hit, it's good for both sides. But if we're talking pure advantage, it's definitely going to be the defense. And that's why it's great to have observations now. I've obviously made quite a few myself, and I'm happy to be there covering and watching this. But when the pads get on, that's when you really start to get down to the brass tacks of things, because that's when it's going to be the truth will reveal itself in that sense, because right now it's kind of like we're not getting the full picture, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would say the defense for sure.
Yep, and that's a good point. I definitely agree with you in there. Pinor, do you guys see Lance extending plays longer than Jimmy in practice, or is practice not designed to give QB pressure yet until pads come on? Yeah, Jimmy. Trey, like I said, he rolled out and he rolled out 2 times. One was a pass breakup, but the other one was a beautiful throw towards where he was going, towards the sideline. But he hit Dwelly, and those are the sort of things that you're not going to see from Jimmy Garoppolo. And I get again, 2 things were evident. Trey can move with the ball and throw it, and he's throwing the ball down the field. Those are 2 things that are objective. That's not subjective. That's not up for debate. That's how this was. I don't, whoever wants to say whatever, that's up to you. What I saw with my eyes was, like I said, one guy's average depth of target was 3, 4, 5 yards. Another guy's was 15 to 20 yards. The degree of difficulty and those windows close a lot faster. So there's the difference. It's 2 different things, and you can definitely see it. It was night and day as well when it comes to that. Carlos has a question as well. Outside of Warner, how is our linebacker group looking in camp? Greenlaw looked like he's on a similar path to Warner. They look fine today. I mean, it's going to be Greenlaw, Warner, and Azeez Al-Shaair. I'll tell you what I saw. I saw K'Wan Williams working off on the side by himself with the resistant bands and just kind of, and not really, he was on the field here and there, but you didn't really see too much of him. I know that he's not going to really be down there on base downs, but it was those 3 guys on there as well too. So yeah, I mean, everything, it was harder today with the defense because, again, 11 on 11s were a little far away, and it's really hard. Like, there were certain points where we were like, oh, man, what number is that? Who was that? And we had to go back and forth. But, yeah, I think that today was a little bit evident in the 2 different styles between the quarterbacks and what they offer. And, it's going to be fun to continue to track this as it's going. And here we go. This one's for Jordan. Jordan, I'll let you take this one. Honest opinion, does Elijah Mitchell look better than Sermon, or is it just too early to tell with pads?
He looks more explosive than Sermon, and it's not some groundbreaking observation to say that. If anybody who watched him in college would understand that. Sermon looks good. Sermon's got I think they offer, and it's a very loose comparison, so please don't hold me to this. But what I can kind of compare it to is when Shanahan had Tevin Coleman and he had Devonta Freeman, and he had a guy with a little bit of thump to him and a guy with a little bit of speed. They had that like thunder and lightning dynamic, whatever they called it in Atlanta. I think that's what those 2 backs, if they end up staying on the team now and in the future, offer. Mitchell adds a little bit more explosiveness, a little bit more speed out of his first cut. He looked great to me. To me, he looked like yesterday. He looked like the best running back. Today, Trey Sermon was far and away the best running back. So for the past 2 days I've been there, each one had a day where they looked demonstrably better than everybody else in that group, in my opinion. So if I'm taking the all-around package, the thing with Sermon is that he has such a good low center of gravity, and his balance through contact. That's something when I was doing his tape breakdown a couple months ago after the draft that really stood out to me. That through contact, the guy, there's times where he's going to the ground and he's so good at getting his hand in the dirt and keeping his balance upright, running through guys. And he's one of those guys where, it's cliche, but when you have to tackle a guy that's that hard to bring down over and over and over again, and the fourth quarter comes around, ultimately, no matter how big, strong, and fast those defenses are, they're ultimately going to wear down. And then you have a situation where you can wear defense down with a guy like Trey Sermon, and then you have a Raheem Mostert to come in who has that blazing speed, who ends up taking, is a home run threat on every play. You have an Elijah Mitchell who's blazing fast like that. So ultimately, I would, if you're holding me to it and I have to pick one or the other, I really like Mitchell, but I would just probably say Sermon just because I think that he has a little bit more of a complete package, but they're both so good at different things. I'm not sitting here saying, Trey Sermon's better than Elijah Mitchell, but if I really had to pick one or the other, I just think Sermon's a more complete package, but I'm extremely excited about both. And I don't think that Elijah Mitchell is getting as much hype and, optimism and outlook that I think he deserves.
Right, and to piggyback off that, you're absolutely right. When they went in the draft and they got Sermon, he profiles more like that bell cow back. And when you talk about balance, low, right, that screams like Frank Gore, right? And I don't want to compare him to Frank because Frank's played so long, but those are sort of the things that Frank did well. It was hard to bring him down. His center is really low, and Sermon kind of profiles like that too. And Mitchell profiles more like that Mostert type. So it's evident, right, where the way that the running back room is constructed. Mostert's that fast guy. He's not under contract next year. Elijah Mitchell, I'm not trying to say that he can be Mostert because I think, like Jordan has said many times, I think we kind of downplay Mostert's vision and his hit the hole type. But Mitchell profiles just like that, and Sermon profiles, more like that in between the tackles. So they're going with that. One more thing too, if we're talking about running backs, Wayne Gallman, man, he caught a pass, I believe, over the middle to somebody. It was. Can't remember. Rosen did throw a pick, I think, on his third pick for the people that are asking, but could have swore I saw Gallman catch a pass, but I saw him break off that really nice run. And again, that's not the defense letting him. They were trying to run towards his side, and he actually broke it. So, his running back room is pretty padded right now. So it's going to be really interesting to see tomorrow because they'll probably be closer to us on the field tomorrow. So we'll be able to see a little bit more. But I think that at 50 minutes, we've kind of touched on everything. Jordan, any other last things to touch on before we get out of here?
Yes. Remember the name Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles is going to be a high-impact player for the San Francisco 49ers this year. Put some respect on DFF's name. Remember, get in early, buy low. Don't sell high because we're not selling them at all, but buy low, get in early. DFF is a guy to watch during camp.
And another thing to point out too is Mike McGlinchey did look good today, and he has looked good. Like I said, he looks massive, but he looks fast and strong, and I didn't really see him give up too much. Again, there were plays where the pocket was collapsing. That didn't mean that anybody was getting beat. They were just holding their spot. And again, Jimmy had to either step up, but Trey was actually taking it outside of the pocket and making throws on the run. So I think we've touched on everything. It was an amazing day today, beautiful day. You guys saw Aaron Banks come out and hit the snap your fingers. That was really fun. This team, thankfully went through today. No more injuries, anything like that. So that's another good thing that obviously we have to hang our hat on. But today was an interesting first day for me to see the quarterbacks up close and to see what they were doing, because you can get reports from everywhere. But, it's one thing to see something with your eyes. And I was so happy to do that today. Today was a lot of fun. So with that being said, I'm working on an article now that I'll be posting on 49ers Gold Mine. Jordan's going to be posting something on Niners Nation. So look out for those. And we'll be back tomorrow with something similar, right after practice, so we can talk a little bit about more. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank everybody for the donations. Just make sure that you like this video, please, so you can push it up on the algorithm. And if you're not subbed to the channel, please sub to the channel and set your notifications on for when we go live, because we will be going live right after every practice that we attend. So for Jordan, for Jason, we're out of here. Thank you guys for tuning in.